Nintendo was able to benefit off of the Wii U and most of its games being such a failure, because then, when the Switch brought the quality out of the dumpster, people praised them for turning things around. I personally loved Mario Tennis Aces, and I know a lot of people do as well, but I think the general consensus when that game came out and carrying over to present day was that it has a lot of great gameplay mechanics, but not a lot to do with those great mechanics. However, every single big YouTuber at the time was hyping the game up for how great it looked, and I'm not sure if a lot of those people would have jumped on the game otherwise. The influence and impact of Nintendo YouTubers during the Switch era cannot be understated. So many games only sold as well as they did, or garnered as much attention as they did, because of YouTube. And I'm telling you right now, Zelda before Breath of the Wild was not as popular as it is today. Zelda was nowhere near Mario before the Switch era. It just wasn't. The series plainly and flatly was not. A lot of Nintendo fans did see Mario and Zelda as like the two main pillars of the franchise and of the company as whole, but I'm telling you right now, Zelda was not that popular until Breath of the Wild took over. Breath of the Wild made everything so much different, and YouTubers played that game so much. People like Small Ant, Point Crow, all of these other speedrunners, people who modded the game, people who did crazy challenges with the game, Zach Scott Games, all of those playthroughs and every single 100-episode series that you ever see from this game. People like DB Geek. He absolutely made people love this game more and more and more over the years, and people just realized that this game was special, it was different, and it connected to a different kind of crowd than any other Zelda game had prior. But back to my example of Mario Tennis. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash on the Wii U was so unbelievably bad that Tennis Aces, by comparison, looked 10 times better. Similarly to Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword, if Skyward Sword had released in the modern day, sure, it would look great, people would have loved it still, but comparing Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild is like comparing some kids drawing on a fridge to the Mona Lisa. There's no comparison with the type of gameplay both games offer. Both are incredibly valuable on their own rights, but just comparing them, you just cannot compare them. But we can't help as a society, as a fandom, as a community. We cannot help but either subconsciously or very consciously compare two different types of games just like that. So when Tennis Aces comes out and is way better than Ultra Smash, everyone gives it the benefit of the doubt. Everyone says, oh my goodness, it looks so much better, and the idea around the game is so much more positive because it looked so much better in comparison. Maybe on its own, it wasn't the best experience you could ever have from a video game, but in comparison, you can start to see why a lot of people would have very positive reactions to a trailer that doesn't look all that exciting to you in the present day, knowing what Aces turned out to be. This was the case for almost every other game that sucked on the Wii U or just didn't get a game on that system, and then eventually the Nintendo Switch turned it around. It went both ways for Nintendo, because Breath of the Wild, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and Metroid Dread were all ridiculously hyped up before, during, and after release. Because the Wii U simply just did not provide a new game for any of those franchises. Every single one of those games ended up being a phenomenal experience and was totally worth the wait. But now that the standard for all of Nintendo's biggest franchises is nothing but the best, what happens if the Switch 2 only provides an okay experience in those respective series? What happens when the amazing humans behind these games have a off day at the office and the game suffers because of it? Or if they have some great idea that turns out to not be so great to anyone outside of the meeting room? Imagine that Animal Crossing gets a brand new game on the Switch 2, Animal Crossing Newest Skyline, and it's all about building up a big city instead of some cozy town or abandoned island. And instead of fishing and customizing your homes and just getting to know the community and having fun doing all of these different things, you had to build up a business for yourself, and all of the villagers were not just villagers, but were your coworkers at some massive company. This is not necessarily a bad idea all on its own, but it completely and totally spits in the face of what Animal Crossing has been as a franchise up to this point. And Nintendo historically has never handled success in the correct ways. They've taken it to mean that they can just be as wacky as they want, put gameplay first in everything, forget all story, forget every single thing, and just not take fan expectations into account. And I think the Switch 2 will be different, and they will continue to make amazing games, continue to follow these philosophies that have allowed the Switch to succeed. But there is always a chance that their wackiness will get them into trouble. They really have to consider which franchises have the most expectations upon them and also will just sell the most consoles. If they had known how massive a game like Animal Crossing New Horizons was going to be, do you think they still would have released it in 2020, almost 3 years after the console launched? Sure, the original plan was to launch in 2019, and it got delayed so they could avoid crunch time, but if they had planned everything out ahead of time, if they had planned all of their franchises like I'm going to do today, I think they would have likely tried to have put it out a bit earlier, maybe early 2018, right before Smash Bros, to keep that hype going. On the flip side of that, Luigi's Mansion 3 ended up being a massive success as well. I bet if they had known that was going to happen, they might have wanted that game to release a little bit earlier or a little bit later, depending on which quarter. They didn't have a lot of games to fill out. If they had known ahead of time how much of a heavy hitter this would be, I'm sure things would have changed a little bit in the schedule to give this game a little bit more breathing room compared to some of the other releases. You can see now how it is such a big deal to pick when and where a game will release on your Nintendo Switch 2 schedule. This is a huge deal. If the first year goes by and Nintendo has nothing but Mario Kart, that would be a huge problem. Sure, Mario Kart would sell like bananas, it would be a phenomenal game in the first year of the console, but if we got no other first-party games in the first year, that would tell us a lot about where the system is heading. You have to get consumers on board early, and the Switch is no longer a novel concept. Playing your games anywhere at any time is no longer such a crazy thing that people have to rush to the stores for. You're gonna have to bolster that idea with strong software. That is why the holiday game is such a big thing every single year, why YouTubers will talk all up and down circles and everywhere about the idea of what game is going to release for Black Friday. Because if you get a mom going to the store or a dad going to the store and their kid has been talking about the Switch 2 all summer long, and finally it's Black Friday, I'm willing to spend some money, let's go out, let's buy a Switch 2, oh and look, a new Mario Kart, oh look, a new 3D Mario game. That's the kind of stuff that gets people in the stores, that gets them buying and gets them consuming your product and wanting to buy more games for the console in the future. If that same kid has a Switch and doesn't see any cool commercials for cool new games during the holiday season, they're not going to bug their parents, and their parents aren't going to want to buy it. And for the people who are adults, like people who are probably listening to this video right now, who buy their own games, if you buy a Switch 2 or don't buy a Switch 2 and you see that there are no games coming, why would you want to buy a console? Or would you feel regret for having been one of those early adopters that just didn't end up getting a lot of bang for their buck in the first year? And another piece of this complicated strategic pie, how in the world do you follow up on some of these Nintendo Switch games? I mean, how in the world do you follow up Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? How do you follow up Smash Bros. Ultimate? Of course you have to keep making games in those series, but those games in particular were the best in the franchise by far and had so much content in each and every one of them. How do you just make a new game for those series without it being a disappointment to the general public that there is less content than in its predecessor? They can't just keep adding more and more content every single installment. That is just totally unreasonable. All of this talk to say, there is a lot that could go seriously wrong with the Switch 2's game schedule. and I find it to be such a fascinating topic that I want to try and fill out every single year of the Switch 2's lifespan. I will predict which series come when and why I think they will. Nintendo won't just repeat exactly what they did with the Switch, and that means some franchises will have way more time between releases than one might think. For example, it has already been 6 years since Super Smash Bros. Ultimate came out, so one might reasonably expect that game would have a new installment soon. But I don't think that game will release until 2028 at the earliest. And a lot of people will try to convince you that because it's been so long, it's just inevitable that we see it this year or next year or whatever they're gonna say. But we have to think strategically here. Nintendo would not just copy and paste their exact same release schedule every single generation. There is obviously going to be some differences from console to console with when each franchise releases a game on that new console. But the good news is we won't have to wait too long to find out how wrong my predictions may be, because April 2nd is the big Switch 2 Direct that will tell us a lot about what the first year of this console looks like, what franchises are coming, what games are coming, what we can expect moving forward. Because if in this presentation they somehow announce, a new Smash Brothers game and a new Animal Crossing game for the first year, then we can kind of predict what other franchises they're working on and holding off for the next year. I would also like to say that there's a pretty good chance that I get a bunch of these wrong. A lot of this is just me doing it for fun and why I think all of these different franchises should come exactly when they do. So these predictions will likely be void by the end of the year, to be honest. Even after just April, a month from now pretty much, a lot of what I am saying will probably not be possible to even happen moving forward. So I just want to clarify that for my future videos when I predict things that end up being a little bit different than what I'm saying here, because sure, I do think this is how they might do it, how they possibly should do it, but if it doesn't end up happening, I'm going to have to adapt to that moving forward. So I'm just putting this disclaimer here so that way people don't call me a hypocrite when I eventually go back and retract some of these statements here. So as smart as it might be if I were to hold off on this video until that Switch 2 presentation happens and we get to see all of the new stuff, I'm going to try to predict ahead of time which franchises I think are coming to the console and why. So without further ado, it is time to predict when every single franchise will come to the Nintendo Switch 2. But before that, make sure you like and subscribe if you are enjoying the video today so far. Consider joining my membership program to get a whole bunch of perks, including early access to videos, Discord servers, etc. Thank you very much. Back to the video. And starting off in 2025 now for the Nintendo Switch 2, I think Mario Kart doesn't necessarily have to be the launch title for that system. The Nintendo Switch teaser trailer, the very first look at that console, yes, it did have Breath of the Wild at the start of it, but it also had Mario Odyssey, it had Splatoon 2 in it, it had Skyrim in it, and none of those three games ended up being a launch title, and the soonest one of those three released was in July, and the console launched in March. Now listen, I'm only saying all of this because I had predicted for years and years that, a 3D Mario game would be the launch title for the Switch 2, and I really want to be right about that, and I really would rather play a 3D Mario at launch, although a new Mario Kart sounds amazing, I want to play both, but it's been so much longer since I really got into a 3D Mario game, so I would rather play that, but still, I'm just going to have to say that Mario Kart is the launch title for the Switch 2, because this time around, they have a little bit more time to market these games before the console actually releases, unlike with the Switch, where they kind of just let out a trailer in October, and they had already marketed Breath of the Wild up till this point for years, and people had been waiting for it, and just had so much more expectations for that game, to where they were fine with launching the console with it. Mario Kart does not have those same kind of expectations because nobody knew of its existence until the teaser trailer just in January. So yeah, I gotta say, I think I was wrong. I think 3D Mario will not be the launch title. Mario Kart will be the launch title, especially considering how ridiculously well 8 Deluxe has sold and is still selling in the year of our Lord 2025. It's ridiculous how much this game continues to sell, and Nintendo also probably has to see that and has to capitalize on those sales, saying, hey, the very first option you get if you buy a Switch 2 is to keep up to date with the brand new Mario Kart, and they're going to have to do something to make it even better than 8 Deluxe, or at least to make it more marketable to where it's like, hey, this is a big enough upgrade for you to want to buy the console and the game with it. I'll talk later about what my specific predictions are in another video for the April 2nd Direct, but this kind of gives you a little bit of a hint of it if I'm telling you what I think the first year of the Switch will look like. So yeah, I do think Mario Kart New World, or whatever they're going to call it, will launch as a launch title. Now, the Switch had an unreasonable amount of games coming out in the first year of that console. I don't think that they're going to do the same thing with the Switch 2, because they don't necessarily have to prove to us anymore that they're capable of making big, massive, amazing games like they did back in 2017. So I hope and believe that their scale of games are going to go back just a bit. There's still going to be some great games in this year, but not as many. So I think the next game they're going to highlight, the next game right after Mario Kart, which I do think, by the way, the console will launch in June. And so if June is when they launch it, I think July will probably be, either July or August will be when they get the next big release out for us. And that game, I do think, will be an enhanced version of Metroid Prime 4 and an enhanced version of Breath of the Wild. I don't know if they're going to just give us a new release for Metroid Prime 4, or if it's just going to be that game so happens to release on that window and they market it for Switch 2 because, hey, you can buy it on Switch 2 as well. It's backwards compatible and it's going to look better just because the console runs more beefier hardware. I don't know. It's going to be bigger and better, so they're going to market it to us as Metroid Prime 4 Beyond on the Switch 2. Go out and buy it day one kind of thing. And then Breath of the Wild. This might be something that you are confused about if you have not been following my channel for a long time. Breath of the Wild, not Tears of the Kingdom, has been rumored to get an enhanced port since last year around this time. Long story short, there is a code word for every single game at Nintendo. The code for Breath of the Wild was found out to be "You King." So then a leaker named Midori, who has now since been obsolete because he lied about who he was and people didn't like it, so then he just stopped leaking for whatever reason. But I still think the information is good because all of the other stuff that he had said came true. The only thing he lied about was who he was and where he was getting his information from. So still, this is true to me. "You King" was the code word for Breath of the Wild. They found a code word "You King O," and it was later found that O was the code name Ounce for the Switch 2. So that means that "You King O," Breath of the Wild, a Switch 2 version of that game. I think there's going to be a better version of it on the Switch 2 almost immediately after it releases. Maybe that July, maybe that June. It might be another kind of launch title, something that they put alongside it. That would make sense, but I'm just saying in the summer, I'm generalizing this here. It could go alongside of the Switch 2 day one to be like, hey, if you want to play a bigger, better, all the DLC included, all that kind of version of a Breath of the Wild, then yeah, I think they could do that day and date with the Switch 2, but I think around that summertime is when they're going to try to push that really hard. So then moving on to the holiday title, I'm still sticking to my guns here. I think 3D Mario is the game they are going to highlight for the holiday season, and we will also see that in the Switch 2 presentation in April. They're going to start that marketing hype train early for that June-ish Direct maybe that they have. They're going to say in April, hey, this is the Switch 2. You're going to launch day and date with Mario Kart. You're going to get a Breath of the Wild enhanced port, and a month after that, you're going to get Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and then guess what, baby? In the holiday season around October, November, maybe even December, you're going to be able to play a new 3D Mario game, and this game's going to knock your freaking socks off. So they're going to come out there with that Brooklyn accent and everything. But still, I really do think a 3D Mario game is inevitable for this year. And I know I just said earlier not to believe people who say, oh, it's inevitable because it's been so long. But truly, it has been so long. And 3D Mario has not had a game since 2017. And I really do think they're going to want to capitalize on it for this holiday season. There is no other game I can think of that would better sell these consoles in the holiday, other than Mario Kart, which obviously I think is going to launch with the console, and a 3D Zelda is so far in the future, I'm not even thinking about it for this year. Breath of the Wild will cover the Zelda quota for the year, and they will move on to 2026. Oh, by the way, I also think there's going to be some sort of new IP that they announce or talk about, or just something to showcase the Switch 2 and its abilities and all that stuff. I don't know if it's going to launch day and date with the console. I think it probably will come within the first couple of months, but I just wanted to get out there and say, hey, I'm not going to predict new things because I don't know what new things could be. I'm just going to try to stick with the pre-existing franchises and give you 2 to 3 games per year of what I think and when it's going to come. 2026. I think this year is going to see Luigi's Mansion 4. We're going to get our next look at the series and how beautiful it looks. They're going to improve on Luigi's Mansion 3. Next Level Games was bought out by Nintendo. They are officially a Nintendo studio now, and it was obviously worth every single penny. Luigi's Mansion 3 was gorgeous and played phenomenally. I did an entire video on that of why I believe the game is so special, so go watch that when you get the chance. Luigi's Mansion 4 is a big want for me. I hope it's in the first year of the Switch too, but I think it's more of a year 2 kind of game, and I think Nintendo also thinks that now after Luigi's Mansion 3 has sold so well. Luigi's Mansion 4 will launch in the first quarter of 2026. They're not going to repeat that same holiday spooky vibes. They could, but I really do think they're just going to try to get it out there as soon as possible. So yeah, Luigi's Mansion 4 within that first quarter of 2026. Then in the summer of 26, I believe they will launch Splatoon 4. And yes, this game could be divisive for a lot of people. Splatoon has gotten 4 games, if I end up being correct here, in a decade's worth of time. Some other franchises would absolutely kill to get that many releases in just 10 years, but still, Splatoon is one of their biggest franchises now. It's one of those big titles that they have to get on the console as soon as possible. Japan eats that stuff up. The world eats up Splatoon. Splatoon is a phenomenal franchise. They're going to continue doing weird and wacky things with that franchise. I have already predicted there will be a Splatoon show coming out of the studio Nintendo Pictures, but that's another prediction for another day. I also think this year, a little bit after the summer, maybe in the fall timeline, before the holiday season starts, they are going to release a brand new Fire Emblem game that will be unlike Three Houses, much to my dismay, but will double down on the idea of gameplay first, story last. Graphics are going to look amazing, and people are not going to be happy with how they abandon the idea of Three Houses being the new format moving forward. I have never played a Fire Emblem game besides Three Houses, but it seems to me that game was an extreme exception on how they dealt with the story and characters, instead of just doubling down on the idea of, hey, we're not going to work on that at all. We're just going to say good gameplay and then the stories are bland. Whatever, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I think that's probably what it's going to end up being. Oh, and unfortunately, for people who do not care about this franchise, like myself, 2026 holiday will not have a fun, unique game. It will have a new Pokemon game. Yay. Coming off of Pokemon ZA of 2025, they will give the Switch 2 its very first brand new Pokemon, and we will all be underwhelmed at its graphical fidelity, and the gameplay will not be all that different, and people will still say it is a great game, and I will not be happy with it. I am Pokemon's #1 hater, apparently, so might as well own it, right? I've never played a Pokemon game, and yet I seem to know everything about it. How funny. Moving past my snarky sarcasm, 2027 will see a brand new 3D Kirby game, and I am so excited to see what the Switch 2 will do for this franchise and how they will evolve the Forgotten Land formula, if they will change things up a bit, if it will be more platformy, more actiony, what they're going to do with that, because I do think they could just do another type of Forgotten Land, but I bet you this game will evolve the series in a way that I think the 3D Mario series was able to evolve its own genre. From 64 to Sunshine was a big leap, Sunshine to Galaxy, Galaxy 2, 3D Land, 3D World, then to Odyssey. All of the 3D Mario games were different and the same in some ways, but they evolved off of each other and became better because of it. Kirby and the Found Land will come out in 2027 in the first quarter, and people will be like, man, this is a good game. I also think in 2027, the summer game will be an Animal Crossing game, and people will wonder why it took them 7 years to put a new Animal Crossing game out for the public. But come on, y'all, it's not technically been that long if you think about it. Animal Crossing sufficed for the rest of the Switch's lifespan, and then year 2 is when they initially wanted it on the first Switch. I think they're going to get it done on the Switch 2. Year 2, Animal Crossing Fossil Finder, in which you have to go through the whole game and find some dinosaurs and make them back to life, and Tom Nook pays you for every dinosaur you bring back, and it's going to be a great game, and I love Animal Crossing, so I'm glad it's on the Switch. Year 2, summer title. then I think the Switch 2 will have, for that holiday season of 2027, a brand new 2D Zelda game. Right after Echoes of Wisdom in 2024, people will wonder how in the world they turned it around so fast, because it was technically only 3 years, but Grezzo ended up using somewhat of a similar engine. It's going to look better, it's going to run better, but still, people are going to think it's a little underwhelming. The game is going to be, once again, a Zelda game, not a Link game, and moving forward, the 2D Zelda series will be Zelda, not Link. I think putting a 2D Zelda game in the holiday season of 2027 is really important, because up to this point, I don't think they will have a mainline Zelda game yet. It just takes so long for them to think of these ideas and develop it to perfection now in the 3D series, so they're going to try to lean a little harder on these 2D installments, on spin-offs, on remakes. They're going to lean into the idea of that. I also think this is the holiday season that we get our next Mario Party game on the Switch 2, a little bit later than maybe some people might have expected, but hey, another Mario Party game nonetheless, and I don't think that they will mind releasing it next to Zelda. It'll probably be within the next couple of months, like maybe a October or September release for Mario Party, and then a November-December release for Zelda. I think that's pretty reasonable to have both of them at the same time. I'm just trying to fit in some other different types of series here, especially considering later on, it gets a little crazier. Hey, it's 2028 already, 3 years into this new console. It's selling well, it's not selling as well as the Switch, but it's still selling really well. People are loving the console, loving the games, and the PlayStation 6, and then the Xbox, whatever refrigerator they call it, is going to be out, and people are going to wonder how the Switch 2 is able to keep up with those amazing consoles that make people look like aliens, and it's going to be crazy. So 2028, they're going to have to bring the big guns for the first quarter, and instead of bringing big guns, they're going to say, Mario Sports time, baby. They're not going to give us a Mario Sports game until year 3 of the Switch 2. This time, it's going to be a little bit of a twist. Instead of a regular sports game, it's going to be a lot of the sports games combined, similar to Sports Mix, but it's only going to be 2, Mario Tennis and Mario Golf. And we're going to wonder why they did that, why they didn't just keep them to their own devices, and the game won't sell entirely well, but it will still be fun for people like me who play tennis matches over and over and over again. The summer game for 2028 will be a brand new Donkey Kong game. Retro Studios finally got back to their devices, and this time they decided to develop a 3D Donkey Kong game, taking the country formula and putting it into 3D style, similarly to Kirby and the Forgotten Land. People are going to say, oh my goodness, Retro Studios is an amazing studio. After Prime 4 Beyond, nobody knew what they would do next because of all of the cancellations that had come prior, but Nintendo said, hey, you guys do Donkey Kong well, so just do a 3D one, and they do it, and it's amazing. This could also potentially launch on the first year of the Switch 2. I could see a 3D Donkey Kong happening, but the reason I decided to hold that off was because I think they're going to want to give 3D Mario all of the room to just settle on that, for people to say, hey, if I want a 3D platformer, I'm going to get 3D Mario. And then Kirby came the year after that, and then now Donkey Kong. I just don't think they're going to want it to put all of these 3D games so close together, so I'm spacing them out here. The holiday title for 2028 will be Mario Maker 3. Mario Maker 3 will also include 3D games such as 3D World, Mario Odyssey, and Galaxy 1, on top of all of the other 2D games and Mario Wonder. That is why it ended up taking 9 years between Mario Maker 2 and Mario Maker 3, is because they were working on the kinks and developing out every single little bit of level, all of the items. It's going to be bigger and better than ever. And Ryukar will continue to be an awesome dude who plays these amazing games. Moving on to 2029, this is the year that we finally get to see our next 3D Zelda game and our next Smash Brothers game. But first, the very first quarter of 2029 will have a brand new 2D Metroid game. It's going to be awesome, and it's just going to be a reminder as to why people continue to love this franchise as much as they do. Then, in the summer of this year, we get Xenoblade 4. And we will wonder why it took so long to do that, because Monolith Soft has been so great at pumping these games out, but after they had done Xenoblade 1 remastered, they did Xenoblade 2 on the Switch, Xenoblade 3, then Xenoblade X remastered, I think Nintendo is going to see how invaluable they are and put them on a lot of other games, and also at the same time have them make a new IP. So that is why Xenoblade 4 has gotten delayed for so long. They probably also wrapped up the story so well with Xenoblade 3, they didn't know where to take it with 4. Maybe they do some sort of other JRPG series and leave behind the Xenoblade moniker. I don't know, but Monolith Soft will do awesome things, and that will be the first quarter release for 2029. And then, in the summer of this year, we will get Super Smash Bros. Even More Ultimate, and yes, that will be the official title, I'm telling you right now. They're spreading out a lot of their big franchises. Every single year has a big game, if you notice in my predictions here. I'm spreading them out well enough to make people constantly excited about the Switch 2, to get people constantly talking about these different things, and of course, the directs and all of the games that they announce in those, the third-party representation. I'm sure we'll get Persona 6 on the Switch 2. We're gonna get some sort of new Elden Ring type game on the Switch 2, Call of Duty, all of these crappy games that people love, all of the Madden games, everything on Switch 2 is going to be announced in these directs. People are going to be excited to play the console. 2029, we're going to see this become one of the highest selling consoles of all time, probably in the top 10. It's going to be great. Aonuma will take the stage sometime this year and present a big blowout of information for the new 3D Zelda. I'm not even going to predict what that could be because at this point it could be anything. Breath of the Wild was completely original. Tears of the Kingdom was a sequel to that. Now I think they're going to try to do another story, another land with that gameplay, except they're going to add some sort of crazy new gimmick to it. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be amazing, and I am so sad that I'm predicting this for 2029 holiday, because that means we already have to wait 4 more years. But still, it's going to be a phenomenal game, and I can't wait to play it. 2030 will be the year that people start to come back with the Switch 2 and say, hey, this game isn't as powerful as what is on PS6. This game isn't as powerful as the Xbox Fridge. What the heck, Nintendo? You guys need to put out a Pro console. You guys need to move on to the next generation. And Nintendo fans are going to say, what the heck, these games look amazing. It's still relevant in modern day. I don't know what's wrong with you all, but still, 2030 will be the year people start talking even more about the successor to the Switch 2. Will there be a Switch 3? Will they go in a different direction? Do people care about a portability type mode again? Did PlayStation end up putting out their own kind of portable console? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but they're going to have to bring some heavy hitters this year. That's why Pikmin 5 will be the first quarter game for 2030. I think Pikmin 5 is going to look even better than most people could ever imagine for the Switch 2. This console is going to honestly spit out a ton of amazing looking games towards the end of its lifespan. People are going to figure out how to use the hardware, how to make games look better, and Pikmin 5 is going to be one of those games that we can't believe is running on the Switch 2. It fills out the schedule nicely, has been long enough for them to make their obligatory 1,000 years between development of these Pikmin games, so of course they're going to put all of that on the Switch, and at that point they're going to remaster the first couple games, 1, 2, and 3 to look just as good as 4 and 5. Pikmin is going to take over the start of 2030, and Arlo will be very, very happy. The summer of this year is when we will see Nintendo Switch 2 Sports. We're going to get a sports game that also kind of coincides with the Ring Fit Adventure type game. It's going to have the sports moniker, but it's also going to include some different types of Ring Fit Adventure stuff. It's going to be weird blue ocean stuff that you use motion controls with, and a lot of people aren't super interested in, but then it somehow sells like 1 million copies at the end of the day. So I really am excited to see what this game will look like, because I know they're going to go all out to get that blue ocean crowd all ramped up, and they're going to take the bait. Now at this point I have a lot of options because it's been 5 years since the first 3D Mario game, and I want to say that they're going to do another 3D Mario game completely different than that one, but Nintendo has historically not done the same type of 3D Mario game on the same console unless it was a sequel. There was no Sunshine 2, 64 2, Odyssey 2. All of these games came and went on the console, they sold the entire life, and they just never made another 3D Mario game. I'm going to say at this point that Pokemon gets another mainline game on the Switch 2, and it's going to start to look a little bit acceptable. It's going to start to look maybe kind of like a Wii U graphics, maybe if they get enough people to work on it, but it's going to be pretty fun for the people who enjoy that game. Pokemon will just continue to be Pokemon. 2031, I am predicting, will be the last year of the Switch 2's lifespan. At this point, technology has evolved so much that they're going to want to hurry up and put out a Switch 3 for the next couple years. So this year is going to be a little bit of a down year. They've covered most of the big franchises at this point. This will be the first year we get a brand new Paper Mario game, and that's going to come out in the first quarter of 2031. Everyone's going to be confused why it took so long to get a Mario RPG on the console, because up to this point, there has been none. No Mario and Luigi, no Paper Mario, no Mario RPG sequel or spin-off, nothing of the sort. And so it will be a relief to people who love these types of games to finally see it on the Switch 2, and it's going to look gorgeous and be such a fun experience for those fans. I also think this is the year we get our first 2D Mario for the Switch 2, another huge gap for 2D Mario again, but they're really trying to space these out. They're trying to put as much creativity into them as possible, and this game is going to be huge. It's going to be massive. There's going to be about 15 worlds to sift through. All these levels are going to be phenomenal. The game's going to look great, going to play great. We're going to love having waited this long because it will have been worth the wait. And finally, I think the last big game for this year will be a sequel to a new IP. Some new IP will have taken off on the Switch 2, and they will have turned around and made a sequel for it to spit out before the Switch 3 comes out. This will be the year for that. Now, there are a bunch of other franchises that I didn't mention. That was because I just tried to keep it to 2 to 3 big franchises per year. I just wanted to talk about the ones specifically that I thought were going to be able to shape the rest of the Switch 2's lifespan, and of course stuff like Golden Sun, Kid Icarus, Rhythm Heaven, maybe even Star Fox and F-Zero. Some of those franchises could make a comeback on the Switch 2, but I'm not going to predict those here. I just wanted to basically say this is when I think a lot of their main franchises will come out, and as to why, well, I explained that earlier. So, thank you so much for making it to the end of this very, very long predictions video. I appreciate you so much. Make sure to like and subscribe today's video if you enjoyed the content. Click the notification bell to know exactly when my videos will release, and consider joining my membership program to support me and the channel at large. Members get early access to all of my videos, specific Discord chats, you get all sorts of different badges that you can have on comments. All those perks and more are available to members only, so make sure you join that program if you are interested in supporting the channel. Once again, thank you for making it to the very end of this video. You guys are amazing. Click on the right playlist to get more information about all of the Switch 2 and my coverage of it, and click on the left to see my breakdown of the Mario Kart trailer and all the stuff y'all missed. Thank you guys very much once again for making it to the very end of the video. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see y'all in the next video. Have a great day.